I had just set Clover's food dish on the kitchen floor when my phone vibrated. The screen lit up with my sister's name, Maya Park, and I answered with the casual ease of someone whose life was still intact. "Hey, Maya, how's—" Her voice cut through mine, tight with the clipped authority of a cockpit announcement. "Listen carefully," she said, barely above a whisper. "I need you to answer one question. Is Rowan home right now?" The urgency in her tone made my stomach twist. I glanced through our River North condo's open concept layout into the living room. There he was, Rowan Pierce, my husband of 7 years, lounging on our cream leather sofa. He caught my eye and lifted his coffee mug in a small salute, that familiar half-smile playing at his lips. The morning sun through our floor-to-ceiling windows gilded his dark hair, making him look almost angelic. "Yes," I answered slowly, turning back toward our marble island to hide my confusion. "He's right here. Why?" A pause stretched through the line, so long I thought we'd lost connection. Then her whisper returned, so sharp it sliced through my bones. "That's impossible. I'm looking at him right now, on my flight to, Paris, in seat 3A, with another woman." The floor tilted beneath me. My coffee mug slipped from my fingers, shattering against the hardwood like the perfect life I thought I had. Clover darted under the dining table, her tortoise-shell fur bristling. "Maya, that can't—" "I'm sure, Brooks. It's him. Same scar above his eyebrow from college lacrosse. Same Breitling watch you gave him for your 5th anniversary. He's wearing his navy Tom Ford suit, the one with the monogrammed cuffs." My eyes drifted to our coat closet where that very suit should be hanging. "Are you positive?" I managed, voice barely audible. "He just ordered champagne for both of them. Brooks, listen to me." But whatever she was about to say evaporated as our front door creaked open behind me. I turned instinctively, still, clutching my phone. Rowan's face drained of all color as his eyes locked on whoever had just entered. I followed his gaze and the air vanished from my lungs. Standing in our doorway was a man I'd never seen before. In his hand was a set of keys, our keys, and slung over his shoulder was a bag identical to one Rowan carried. For 3 eternal seconds, we all stood frozen in a tableau of confusion. Then the stranger spoke, his voice oddly familiar. "You're home early," he said to Rowan, and I realized with horror that he was speaking with Rowan's exact cadence, Rowan's precise intonation. My husband, or the man I thought was my husband, recovered quickly, composing his face into a mask of control. "Brooks," he said, rising from the couch, "I can explain." But explanation became impossible as, My sister's voice still hissed from my phone. "Brooks? Brooks, are you there? He's ordering another bottle. Brooks?" The room spun around me. My husband was in 2 places at once, and the truth was walking into my home, keys in hand, wearing a face that didn't belong to him. It would leave us all speechless. I met Rowan Pierce 8 years ago at a compliance conference in Boston. I was presenting a panel on financial fraud detection. He was in the audience asking the only questions that made me think. Later, at the hotel bar, he ordered a gin and tonic for himself and a whiskey sour for me, my drink of choice, without asking. When I raised an eyebrow, he smiled. "I pay attention to details," he'd said. His attention to detail was what made him an exceptional investment consultant. It was what made me fall in love with him. And apparently, it was what made him exceptional at creating the perfect double life. Now, as I stood in my kitchen with my phone in hand and 2 versions of my husband before me, those details were crumbling like sandcastles at high tide. "Who are you?" I finally managed to ask the stranger, ignoring Rowan's attempts to intervene. The man lowered his bag, slowly, uncertainty crossing his features. "I'm Theo," he said simply. "Theo who?" "Theo Ramos. I'm an actor." He swallowed hard. "I was hired to—" "That's enough." Rowan moved between us, his voice commanding. "Brooks, we need to talk privately." I stepped back, keeping both men in my sightline. "My sister is looking at you boarding a flight to Paris right now, Rowan. So unless you've mastered, by location, one of you is lying." I turned my attention back to Theo. "Finish your sentence. You were hired to what?" Theo's eyes darted to Rowan, then back to me. "To play a role." The words fell like stones. "To be him. Here, with you." The room tilted again. Clover emerged from under the table, her tail puffed to twice its size. She approached Theo cautiously, sniffing his shoes, then backed away with a low growl. "How long?" I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. Theo hesitated. 3 months. 3 months. 90 days of morning coffees, Evening walks by the Chicago River, weekend brunches, and whispered conversations in bed, all with a stranger wearing my husband's face. The revulsion rose in my throat like bile. Why? I turned to Rowan, whose composure was fracturing at the edges. What possible reason? Money, Theo interrupted, and Rowan's head snapped toward him with such venom I flinched. He needed you distracted while he moved funds offshore. He needed you to think everything was normal. Shut up, Rowan hissed. I remembered the inconsistencies I'd brushed aside. Charges from hotels I'd never visited. Work trips that never appeared in his company's online calendar, his sudden over-attentiveness, as if covering a fault line. And Clover, my intuitive little detective, who had started hissing at him months ago, refusing to sit near him. Maya's voice still emanated from my phone. Brooks, I'm taking a photo. I'm sending it now. My screen lit up with an image. Rowan, unmistakably Rowan, raising a champagne glass next to a blonde woman I'd never seen. His navy Tom Ford suit, his Breitling watch, his wedding ring, the one I thought was on the hand of the man standing in my living room. How did you do it? I asked, voice hollow. How did you become him? Theo shifted uncomfortably. Recordings, notes. I studied for weeks before. I said that's enough. Rowan's voice cracked like a whip, but it was too late. The illusion had shattered. Looked at him, really looked, and saw the minute differences I'd missed. The way Theo held his shoulders slightly higher than Rowan's natural posture. The careful way he mimicked mannerisms that should have been effortless. You accepted shrimp scampi last week, I said, the realization dawning. Rowan is deathly allergic to shellfish. Theo's face fell. I didn't know. You should leave, I told him, surprising myself with the command in my voice. Nobody is leaving, Rowan countered, reaching for his phone. Not until but I was already moving to the door, holding it open. Theo, go. Now. The actor hesitated, glancing between us. If you stay, you're complicit, I said quietly. If you go, you're just another victim. Rowan lunged forward, but I was faster, positioning myself between them. Theo, the spare room at the Langham Hotel is booked under my name. Go there. Call this number. I handed him my business card with my attorney Riley Vaughn's contact scrawled on the back. Tell her everything. Theo grabbed his bag and slipped past me, pausing at the threshold. I'm sorry, he whispered. I didn't know it would go this far. As the door closed behind him, I turned. To face the stranger I'd married. A man currently in 2 places at once. Both versions equally false. My sister's flight leaves in 20 minutes, I said, my voice steadier than my heart. Which means you have exactly that long to explain how you plan to steal my life before I call the FBI. Clover wound between my ankles, her purr a low rumble of solidarity. The truth had arrived, unscheduled, and uninvited, and it would change everything. The 20 minutes I gave Rowan stretched into 40 as he wove excuses like silk. Financial pressure, temporary solutions, desperate measures. Each word rang hollow against the evidence piling up on my phone. Maya's photos, timestamps, flight manifests. It was only supposed to be for a few weeks, he insisted, pacing our living room, just until I could fix some investments that went sideways. By draining our accounts? I was scrolling through our joint banking app, seeing withdrawals just below federal reporting thresholds, 9,500, 9,200, 9,800, scattered across months. Small enough to avoid automatic flags, large enough to bleed us dry. Those were transfers, not withdrawals, he countered, as if the distinction mattered. I was protecting our assets. In offshore accounts under only your name? I'd already called Riley, who had confirmed what I suspected. Rowan had been systematically moving money through a series of shell companies. My compliance background made the pattern painfully clear. He stopped pacing, his expression hardening. How did you know that? I pay attention to details. I echoed his words from years. Ego, the irony bitter on my tongue. Rowan's facade cracked. For a moment, I glimpsed the real man beneath the polished veneer. Calculating, cornered. Brooks, be reasonable. I was under immense pressure. Clients were threatening litigation. I needed breathing room. So you hired an actor to impersonate you at home? For 3 months? I shook my head, disbelief giving way to a cold clarity. While, you what? Lived it up in Europe with another woman? Alessandra is a business associate. The lie came easily to him, practiced. Does she know you're married? His silence was answer enough. I moved to our bedroom, pulling out my laptop. Years of compliance work had taught me to trust documentation over explanation. While Rowan continued justifying his betrayal, I accessed our cloud storage, downloading files, statements, emails. "What are you doing?" Alarm edged his voice. "Creating evidence." I didn't look up. "Maya's flight landed in Paris 40 minutes ago. I'm guessing French authorities are waiting for you at the gate. Did you think I wouldn't call them?" His face paled. "You wouldn't." "I already did." This was a bluff. I hadn't contacted international authorities, but I needed to see his reaction. He lunged for the laptop. I sidestepped, years of kickboxing classes giving me an advantage he hadn't calculated. "Touch me, and assault charges join the fraud," I warned. "You're making a mistake." His tone shifted to the smooth persuasion that had charmed clients and colleagues for years. "We can work this out privately. No one needs to know. The authorities already know." Another bluff, but I maintained eye contact, unwavering. His next words chilled me. "I have friends in places that can make this disappear. And I have evidence in places even your friends can't reach." This, at least, was true. My compliance background had instilled habits of redundancy and security. Copies of our financial records lived in encrypted clouds with access keys held by trusted colleagues. "Tell me about the storage unit," he faltered. "What storage unit?" "The one you rented 3 months ago. The one where you keep Theo's script." This was pure speculation, based on Theo's practiced performance, but I watched Rowan's micro-expressions confirm my guess. "How did you—" He stopped himself. "I didn't. You just told me." I closed my laptop, slipping it into my work bag. "I'm leaving now. When I return, it will be with federal agents." "Brooks, wait." His voice softened, employing the tender tone that had once made my heart flutter. "We can still fix this. Us. Everything. There is no us to fix." I moved toward the door, Clover trailing at my heels. "There never really was." His desperation escalated. "What about our life? Our plans? The house in Michigan we were saving for?" The mention of our lake house fund, a dream we'd shared for years, sent a pang through my chest. I wondered if that money had already been diverted to one of his hidden accounts, financing his double life. "I trusted you with everything," I said quietly. "My heart, my future, my financial security. And you weaponized that trust against me." "It wasn't personal," he insisted. "That makes it worse." I reached for the door. "If you walk out, you'll regret it." His voice hardened, the mask slipping completely. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I turned back, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. "No, Rowan. You have no idea who you're dealing with." With Clover secured in her carrier, I left the condo I'd called home for 5 years, the life I'd built with careful attention to detail, and the man I thought I'd known. In the elevator, my phone vibrated with a text from Riley. "Got your message. Meeting you at my office. Bringing Camille." Camille Rhodes was Riley's contact at the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The fact that she was already involved meant Riley had escalated this beyond my expectations. In the lobby, I passed our doorman Jorge, who had known us, since we moved in. "Everything okay, Mrs. Pierce?" he asked, noting my bag and Clover's carrier. "Not really, Jorge." I managed a weak smile. "But it will be." Outside, Chicago's spring air hit my face, carrying the scent of the river and the promise of a storm. How fitting. I hailed a cab, giving Riley's downtown office address. As the taxi pulled away, I glanced back at our building's gleaming facade, 38 floors of luxury condominiums where people lived out their carefully curated lives, some real, some performances. I wondered how many other marriages were illusions, how many other partners were wearing masks. The cab driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Rough day." I stroked Clover's carrier, drawing comfort from her familiar purr. "Just discovering some truths that were there all along." He nodded philosophically. "Truth has a way of finding daylight." At Riley's office, the reception area was empty. She had cleared it for our meeting. As soon as the glass doors closed behind me, she emerged from her corner office, her tall frame rigid with controlled fury. Behind her followed a woman I assumed was Agent Rhodes, compact, observant, with the measured movements of someone who cataloged details professionally. "Brooks?" Riley embraced me briefly. "This is Camille. We've been talking." She gestured to her office, where a young man sat nervously on the edge of a chair. "Theo. He arrived 20 minutes ago," Riley explained. "He's been quite informative." Theo stood as we entered, his posture a strange echo of Rowan's confident stance, yet distinctly his own. "Ms. Brooks, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand what I was participating in. I need to hear everything," I said, setting Clover's carrier down. "From the beginning." As Theo began recounting his story, the cryptic casting call, the intensive training sessions, the detailed instructions about my preferences and habits, Agent Rhodes recorded while Riley took notes. The picture emerging was more calculated than I could have imagined. Rowan had been planning this for nearly a year. Theo was just the latest actor. There had been others for shorter assignments. "Others?" I interrupted. Theo nodded uncomfortably. Business trips that weren't actually business trips. Weekends when he was working late. Different actors, different scenarios. The revelation struck me, physically, like a blow to the sternum. Those weekends when Rowan was supposedly closing deals in Seattle or San Francisco, had they all been fabrications? "Do you have proof?" Agent Rhodes asked. Theo hesitated, then reached for his bag. "I kept everything. The contracts, the scripts, the recording devices he gave me." He pulled out a manila envelope. "I didn't feel right about any of it, but he said it was for a surprise. A gift for your anniversary." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Some gift? As Camille examined the contents, I noticed something about Theo, a genuine distress that couldn't be acted. He had been a pawn too, manipulated by Rowan's masterful deception. "There's more," he said quietly. "The storage unit. He has everything documented there. Blueprints of your daily routines, recordings of your conversations, details about your friends, your family." He swallowed. "He made me memorize your sister's flight schedule, your cat's veterinarian, even how you take your coffee. The invasion of privacy made me physically ill. Every intimate detail of my life had been cataloged and exploited. I'll need that storage unit key," Agent Rhodes said. Theo handed over a small key from his wallet. "Unit 317, Westlake Storage on Damen Avenue." As Camille stepped out to make calls, Riley turned to me, her legal mind already mapping strategy. "We need to secure your assets immediately, whatever hasn't been moved yet." I nodded, the compliance officer in me taking over. "I embedded a dormant program in our joint accounts last year, a firewall that activates if specific patterns of transfers occur." At Riley's raised eyebrow, I added, "A professional precaution. I never thought I'd need it. Can it be triggered remotely?" "Yes." I pulled out my phone, entering a sequence of codes. "Done. Any attempt to access or transfer funds will now require dual authentication and trigger alerts to banking authorities." Riley smiled grimly. "He underestimated you." "Everyone does," I said quietly. Outside Riley's office windows, Chicago's skyline stretched in geometric perfection, structures built on foundations that could either withstand storms or crumble under pressure. My marriage had been the latter, a beautiful facade with fatal flaws in its foundation. As Agent Rhodes returned, her expression told me what I already knew. This was just the beginning of a long process of discovery, documentation, and eventually justice. Clover stirred in her carrier, pawing at the mesh front. I opened it, letting her climb onto my lap. Her warmth and weight anchored me to reality, a reality that had changed irrevocably in the space of a morning. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now," Camille said, her voice calm but resolute, "we build a case, and you decide how public you want this to be." Public. The word echoed in my mind. Our social circle, our professional networks, our families, all would know. The humiliation threatened to overwhelm me. Then I felt it. A small shift within myself. This wasn't my humiliation to bear. This was Rowan's deception, Rowan's betrayal, Rowan's crime. I stroked Clover's fur, finding strange comfort in her purr. "I choose truth," I said. Finally, however difficult. The storm outside was gathering strength, dark clouds rolling in from Lake Michigan. But for the first time since my sister's call, I felt something like clarity. The truth was here, and it would leave no one speechless. The next 48 hours unfolded like scenes from a movie I never wanted to star in. Agent Rhodes and her team raided the storage unit, discovering what can only be described as a meticulous archive of my existence. Notebooks filled with observations about my habits, recordings of my phone calls, photographs of me going about my daily routines, unaware I was being watched. The violation was so profound I could barely process it. "This is extensive," Agent Rhodes said, her professional demeanor slipping momentarily as she guided. me through the evidence they'd collected. We stood in a conference room at the FBI's Chicago field office, surrounded by the artifacts of Rowan's betrayal. Your husband wasn't just hiding money. He was creating an entire parallel operation. Ex-husband, I corrected automatically, though legally we were still married. And apparently, he was hiding both. The financial picture was even worse than I'd initially feared. Rowan had been systematically draining not just our personal accounts, but also siphoning client funds through a labyrinth of shell companies. The scale suggested he'd been planning this for years, long before Theo, before the other actors, perhaps even before our marriage. We've frozen the accounts we can identify, Camille explained, but there are likely others we haven't discovered yet. She hesitated. Ms. Brooks, I should prepare you. Your husband landed in Paris yesterday morning. By the time French authorities arrived at the gate, he was gone. The news settled in my stomach like lead. Gone where? We're tracking several possibilities. Switzerland, Dubai. Both have banking systems that could help him disappear with the money. Riley, who had barely left my side since this began, placed a steady hand on my shoulder. We'll find him, Brooks. I wasn't so sure. Rowan had orchestrated this elaborate charade for years without detection. His disappearing act was likely just as carefully planned. That evening, Riley insisted I stay at her lakefront apartment rather than returning to the condo or booking a hotel. Hotels can be traced, she pointed out. And the condo might not be safe. We don't know who else Rowan might have working for him. The thought sent a chill through me. How many strangers had been studying my life? How many had keys to my home? Riley's guest room overlooked Lake Michigan, the water a vast darkness punctuated by distant lights. Clover prowled the unfamiliar space, sniffing corners and marking territory with gentle headbutts. At least one of us was adapting. Sleep refused to come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Rowan's face, not the real one in Paris with another woman, but the face he'd shown me for years. Had any of it been real? The courtship, the intimacy, the shared dreams? Or had I been living with a performance from the beginning? My phone vibrated around 2 a.m. Maya. They lost him, she said, without preamble. I'm so sorry, Brooks. It's not your fault. I stared at the ceiling, strangely calm. How's Paris? I'm not staying. I've requested reassignment to domestic routes for the next few weeks. I want to be nearby. The gesture moved me. Maya and I had always been close, but her demanding schedule as an international pilot meant we often went weeks without seeing each other. You don't have to do that. Yes, I do, she insisted. No one messes with my sister and gets away with it. After we hung up, I found myself at Riley's kitchen window, watching the pre-dawn glow touch the horizon. My world had imploded, yet the sun still rose. Time marched forward. My phone buzzed again, an email notification. The sender was unfamiliar, but the subject line stopped my breath. What? Rowan didn't tell you. Against better judgment, I opened it. Ms. Brooks, it began. You don't know me, but I worked with your husband at Meridian Investments 3 years ago. What's happening now isn't the first time. There were others before you, women whose financial lives were systematically dismantled. I have documentation. Meet me at the Wicker Park Coffee House, 10 a.m. It was signed. Simply, a colleague. I showed the email to Riley when she woke. Her response was immediate and firm. Absolutely not. This could be Rowan setting a trap. Or it could be someone who can help us find him. Then they can help through official channels. Forward this to Agent Rhodes and let her handle it. She was right, of course. Meeting an anonymous source alone would be reckless. I forwarded the email to Camille, who promised to send an agent to the coffee house. But as the morning progressed, restlessness gnawed at me. I was tired of being reactive, of having things done to me instead of taking action myself. At 9:30, while Riley was on a conference call, I made a decision. I'll be back in an hour, I whispered to Clover, who watched accusingly as I grabbed my coat. Don't tell. Riley. The Wicker Park Coffee House was bustling with Saturday morning patrons. I chose a table near the back with a clear view of both entrances, ordered a chai latte I had no intention of drinking, and waited. My hands trembled slightly. From caffeine or adrenaline, I wasn't sure. At precisely 10 a.m., a woman in her early 40s approached my table. She wore a tailored blazer and carried herself with the poised confidence of someone accustomed to corporate environments. Maya Brooks? She asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. I nodded, studying her face for any sign of threat or deception. Alessandra Vega. She extended her hand. I believe you know of me. The name hit me like a physical blow. Alessandra, the woman on the plane with Rowan, the business associate. You, I managed. You were with him in Paris. She slid into the chair across from me, her expression grave. Yes and no. She placed a folder on the table between us. I'm an investigator with the Securities and Exchange Commission. I've been tracking your husband for 18 months. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. Your SEC? Undercover. Rowan Pierce has been on our radar since 2022, when similar patterns emerged at his previous firm in Boston. She pushed the folder toward me. He's done this before, Ms. Brooks. Multiple times. Different names, different scenarios, but the same methodology. With unsteady hands, I opened the folder. Inside were photographs of Rowan with different women, professional headshots, social media images, candid photos, alongside financial documents showing familiar patterns of offshore transfers. These are his previous wives? My voice sounded distant, even to myself. Partners. Only 2 marriages that we've confirmed, but at least 5 long-term relationships that followed the same pattern. Gain trust, establish joint finances, create elaborate covers for absences, then systematically drain accounts before disappearing. I stared at the faces of women who had once been where I now stood. Had they felt this same hollowing disbelief? This same vertiginous drop as their realities collapsed? Why are you telling me this? Why not go through Agent Rhodes? Alessandra leaned forward. Because we lost him in Paris. Because official channels move too slowly. And because you're not just a victim, Ms. Brooks. You're our best chance at finding him. Me? How? You're a compliance officer. You understand financial systems, tracking mechanisms, and you know him, the real him, better than anyone else in his current iteration. The implication that I was just another iteration in Rowan's pattern stung, but I couldn't deny its truth. There's something else, Alessandra continued. We believe Rowan has a significant amount of cryptocurrency we haven't been able to trace. The blockchain transactions suggest he's been converting liquid assets to digital currencies for months. This, at least, was an area where I had expertise. Before joining my current firm, I'd specialized in cryptocurrency compliance, tracking suspicious transactions, identifying patterns of money laundering. What do you need from me? I asked. Access to any devices he may have used at home, passwords he might have written down, browser history, anything that might lead us to his digital wallets. I thought of Rowan's home office, the desktop computer he rarely used, preferring his laptop, which was surely with him now, the safe behind the abstract painting in my bedroom, which I'd never seen opened. I can help, I said. Finally. But I need guarantees. I need to know that when he's found, he'll face consequences for what he's done. Not just to me, but to all of them. I gestured to the photos of women whose lives had been systematically dismantled by the man I married. Alessandra's expression softened slightly. That's why I'm here, Ms. Brooks. Justice isn't just about recovering money. It's about making sure predators can't find new prey. As we outlined a plan, I felt something shift within me. A subtle realignment from victim to investigator. I had spent my career identifying financial irregularities, tracking suspicious patterns, ensuring compliance. Now I would use those same skills to find the man who had made a mockery of my life. When I returned to Riley's apartment, she was waiting by the door, furious and relieved in equal measure. Where the hell have you been? I called Agent Rhodes. There are people looking for you. I handed her the folder Alessandra had given me. Finding answers. As Riley paged through the evidence of Rowan's previous cons, her anger gave way to stunned silence. My God, Brooks, he's a serial financial predator. Yes, I said, removing my coat. And now he's the prey. Clover greeted me with an indignant meow, as if scolding me for leaving. I scooped her up, drawing comfort from her solid warmth. What happens next? Riley asked. I stroked Clover's fur, feeling a strange calm settle over me. Now we hunt. The digital forensics team arrived at the condo the next morning. 3 FBI technicians with equipment cases and grim expressions. Agent Rhodes supervised as they systematically dismantled Rowan's home office, cloning hard drives and extracting data from devices I hadn't known existed. There's a secondary router hidden in the HVAC vent, one technician called out, configured to create a separate network. Another discovered a small recording device wired into our bedroom lamp, voice-activated, probably linked to cloud storage. Each discovery was another violation, Another piece of evidence that the man I married had been methodically documenting, studying, and exploiting my life. I watched with detached fascination, as if this were happening to someone else, some other woman whose husband had constructed an elaborate fiction around her. "Ms. Brooks," Agent Rhodes approached, holding a slim black ledger. "We found this in the safe. The combination was your birth date." She handed it to me. "It appears to be a record of cryptocurrency transactions." I opened the ledger, immediately recognizing the notations: wallet addresses, transaction hashes, exchange rates. This was exactly what Alessandra had been looking for. "He kept physical records," I murmured, surprise momentarily overriding my detachment. "That's sloppy." "Overconfidence," Camille suggested. "He never thought anyone would get into the safe." I traced the entries with my finger, mind already translating the cryptic notations into actionable intelligence. "These are transfer records to hardware wallets. Multiple wallets." I looked up at Camille. "He's been moving cryptocurrency offline, storing it on physical devices that can't be traced electronically. Can you decipher where they might be?" I nodded slowly. Some of these transaction notes include location abbreviations: ZUR, DXB, SN. I recognized the airport codes instantly. Zurich, Dubai, Singapore. He's been distributing assets globally, preparing exit strategies. Camille took the ledger back. "This is extremely helpful. Our crypto team will want to analyze these records." Immediately. As the technicians continued their work, I wandered through the condo, seeing it with new eyes. This space that had once felt like home now seemed like an elaborate stage set, dressed and designed for a performance that had run for years with me as the unwitting audience. In the kitchen, I opened cabinets out of habit, looking for the tea I normally drank in moments of stress. The, familiar blue tin was missing. "Looking for this?" A technician held up my tea tin, the lid removed. Inside, where loose-leaf Earl Grey should have been, was a small recording device. I stared at it, then began to laugh, a sound so hollow it barely qualified as laughter. He bugged my tea. My tea. The absurdity of it struck me anew. I don't even like Earl Grey. I drink it because he said it was his grandmother's favorite blend. Riley, who had been quietly observing from the doorway, came to stand beside me. Another lie? Apparently. I closed the tin, setting it aside. I wonder if his grandmother even existed. "Ms. Brooks," another technician called from the hallway. "We found something you should see." In the guest bedroom closet, a room so rarely used I couldn't remember the last time I'd opened its door, they had discovered a false panel. Behind it was a small workspace containing a laptop, multiple phones, a document printer, and a laminating machine. "Identity manufacturing," Agent Rhodes explained, surveying the hidden office. "Passports, credit cards, driver's licenses." I stared at the machinery of deception concealed within the walls of my home. How did I not know any of this? "Because he designed it that way," Riley said gently. "This isn't a failure of observation on your part, Brooks. This is the work of someone who made deception his professional specialty." Still, the question haunted me as we left the FBI to continue their work. How does someone live with another person for years and miss so many signs? What does it say about me? About my judgment? My awareness that I could be so thoroughly deceived? Back at Riley's apartment, I found myself unable to sit still, pacing between windows as darkness fell over the lake. Clover watched from her perch on the sofa, tail twitching occasionally, eyes following my restless movement. "You're going to wear a trench in my hardwood," Riley observed, handing me a glass of wine. "Talk to me." I keep thinking about all the moments that should have tipped me off. I accepted the wine but didn't drink. The business trips that never quite aligned with his company calendar. The way he sometimes seemed to be reciting lines rather than speaking naturally. How Clover started avoiding him months ago. "Cats know," Riley said, only half joking. "They sense imposters. Even the shellfish thing. Rowan, the real Rowan, goes into anaphylactic shock around shrimp, but Theo ate it without blinking." I shook my head. I should have noticed immediately. "Brooks, stop." Riley's tone was firm. "This isn't on you. This man is a professional con artist who has deceived multiple women, financial institutions, and apparently even his own colleagues. He created an entire hidden workspace in your home to manufacture false identities. This isn't about you missing signs. It's about him being exceptionally skilled at hiding them." Her words were logical, rational, exactly what I would tell a friend in my position. Yet the shame persisted, a nagging voice whispering that I should have known better, seen clearer, trusted less. My phone buzzed with a text from Alessandra. Progress on crypto wallets. Meeting. Tomorrow, 9 a.m., SEC offices. As I showed Riley the message, another text arrived. This one from Maya. Landing at O'Hare in 2 hours. Coming straight to you. Need anything? For the first time in days, I felt something like relief. My sister's practical, decisive energy was exactly what I needed. When Maya arrived, her presence filled Riley's apartment with a bracing sense of purpose. She hugged me fiercely, then stepped back to assess me with a pilot's evaluating gaze. You look like hell, she announced. Thanks. I attempted a smile. It's been a challenging week. That's one word for it. She set down her flight bag and pulled out a bottle of expensive bourbon. I brought reinforcements. As Riley found glasses, Maya took in the papers and files spread across the coffee table. Evidence of my improvised investigation center. So, she said, pouring 3 generous drinks. What's the plan to catch this bastard? The directness of the question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on understanding what had happened that I hadn't fully formulated what would happen next. The authorities are tracking him, I said. FBI, SEC, international agencies. Maya scoffed. And how's that working out so far? He disappeared in Paris, right? Probably has new identities already established. Maya, Riley cautioned, this isn't something Brooks can handle alone. Who said anything about alone? Maya countered, settling onto the couch beside Clover, who immediately climbed into her lap. She has us. She has contacts in the financial industry. And she has something no agency does. She knows how he thinks. I sipped the bourbon, letting its warmth spread through my chest. The SEC believes he has hardware cryptocurrency wallets in multiple countries. If we can locate those, we can potentially track his movements. Good start, Maya nodded. What else? He'll need documents, I continued, thinking aloud. Even with pre-established identities, he'll want fresh ones now that he knows we're looking. Document forgers leave digital trails, Riley added, especially the high-quality ones Rowan would use. And he'll contact his lover, Maya said. This Alessandra woman on the plane. She's an SEC investigator, I corrected. Undercover, she's been tracking him for over a year. Maya's eyebrows shot up. Plot twist. The question is, Riley interjected, who is he really with? If Alessandra was just part of his surveillance, who's his actual partner in crime? The question hung in the air between us. There was still so much I didn't know about my husband's real life, his true connections, his authentic relationships. Had everyone in his orbit been deceived? Or were there people who knew the real Rowan Pierce? We start with what we know. I decided, setting down my glass. The cryptocurrency wallets. The identity manufacturing equipment. The pattern of his previous cons. I looked between my sister and my friend, drawing strength from their unwavering support. And we remember that while he's been studying me for years, I've been studying him too, even if I didn't know that's what I was doing. Maya raised her glass. To turning the, tables. As we clinked glasses, I felt something shift inside me. A hardening resolve. A sharpening focus. Rowan had underestimated me, seeing only what he wanted to see. A trusting wife, a predictable mark, a convenient cover for his operations. He had failed to recognize that compliance officers are trained to identify irregularities, to notice patterns, to follow money through its most obscure channels. He had chosen the wrong woman to deceive. That night, I slept soundly for the first time since Maya's call. In my dreams, I was not running or hiding or searching. I was hunting, methodical, patient, precise. And I knew exactly what I was looking for. The SEC offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower overlooking the Chicago River. I arrived 15 minutes early for my meeting with, Alessandra, pausing in the lobby to steady myself. The past 5 days had transformed me from compliance officer to fraud victim to active investigator. Each role required a different version of myself. The last one still unfamiliar, still forming. The elevator whisked me to the 23rd floor, where Alessandra waited by the reception desk. Thank you for coming, Miss Brooks. Her handshake was firm, professional. No trace of the woman who had sat beside my husband on a flight to Paris, pretending to be his lover. My team is eager to hear your insights on the ledger entries. She led me to a conference room where 3 analysts sat surrounded by monitors displaying blockchain visualizations, transaction flows, and wallet addresses. The black ledger lay open in the center of the table. its pages flagged with colorful sticky notes. "This is remarkable work," said a young analyst as I took a seat. "Your husband documented everything. Transaction hashes, exchange rates, wallet addresses. It's like he wanted to leave a trail. Or he never expected anyone to find it," I countered. Overconfidence, not carelessness. For the next 2 hours, I walked them through Rowan's notations, translating his personal shorthand into actionable intelligence. The location codes confirmed what we suspected. He had hardware wallets stored in safe deposit boxes in at least 6 countries. The transaction timing revealed a pattern of converting assets to cryptocurrency every Thursday, when market volatility typically decreased. "There's something else," I said, pointing to a recurring notation. MRCI, on several entries. These initials appear alongside the largest transfers. The analysts exchanged glances. "We've been trying to decipher that," Alessandra admitted. "Any ideas?" I considered what I knew about Rowan, his habits, his patterns, his peculiar brand of arrogance. "In college, he was obsessed with chess," I said slowly. "He used to annotate his games with his initials, followed by his opponents. RPMB for Rowan Pierce versus Maya Brooks. So MR could be a person," Alessandra concluded. "But CI? Not a person," I realized. "An entity. Cayman Islands." The pieces clicked together. He's moving money through someone with access to Cayman banking, someone with the initials MR. The lead analyst was already typing, searching known entities in Cayman with principals or beneficial owners with those initials. "Try variations," I suggested. "Middle names, maiden names." Rowan likes layers of reference. As they worked, Alessandra guided me to her private office. "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you." She closed the door, her expression grave. "We've identified some of Rowan's previous victims. 2 have agreed to speak with you." The prospect sent an uncomfortable jolt through me. What would I say to these women who had walked this path before me? What could they tell me that I didn't already know? "Why?" I asked simply. "Because they've been where you are. Because they might see patterns we've missed. And because—" Alessandra hesitated. "Because isolation is part of his methodology. Keeping his victims disconnected prevents them from comparing notes." The word victims stung, but I couldn't deny its accuracy. Still, something about this felt wrong. Like being asked to join a club no one would ever want to belong to. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," I admitted. Alessandra nodded. "Think about it. The offer stands." My phone vibrated. A text from Agent Rhodes. "Storage unit yielded more evidence. Can you come to the field office this afternoon?" "I need to go," I told Alessandra. "The FBI has found something." She walked me to the elevator. "We'll keep working on MR and the Cayman connection. And Ms. Brooks?" She held my gaze. "When we find him, and we will find him, you'll have choices about how to proceed. Start thinking about what you want." What I wanted. The question echoed as I crossed the city to the FBI field office. Revenge? Justice? My money back? My life back? None seemed entirely right, entirely sufficient for what had been taken from me. At the field office, Agent Rhodes led me to a room filled with evidence bags and boxes, the contents of Rowan's storage unit being processed and cataloged. "We found these," she said, handing me a stack of notebooks. "They appear to be scripts." I opened the top notebook, recognizing Rowan's precise handwriting immediately. Inside were detailed scene descriptions, character notes, and dialogue, all centered around our life together. "Breakfast scene," one page read. "Maya likes her coffee with 1 sugar and almond milk. Compliment the new blouse, blue, hanging in the guest closet. Mention weekend plans for Michigan. If she brings up work stress, suggest yoga class on Thursday." My stomach turned as I flipped through page after page of scripted interactions. Our entire relationship reduced to stage directions and cues. "There are more," Camille said gently. "Different notebooks for different performers." I set down the one I was holding, unable to continue. "How many?" "5 that we've found so far. All male actors, all hired to play specific roles in your life at different times." The scope of the deception expanded before me, a production far larger than I had imagined. How many moments that I'd treasured had been performances? How many intimate conversations had been rehearsed? "There's something else," Camille continued. "We found correspondence between Rowan and someone named Martin Reeves. Does that name mean anything to you? MR? The initials from the ledger." "No," I said. "Should it?" "We're not sure yet. The letters are cryptic, but they suggest a business relationship spanning several years. Reeves appears to be based in the Cayman Islands. The SEC is looking into the same connection, I told her. Large cryptocurrency transfers linked to those initials. Camille's expression sharpened with interest. We should coordinate our investigations. This could be the partner we've been looking for, someone who's been helping Rowan establish his financial infrastructure. As we discussed next steps, my phone vibrated again. Riley this time. Hit on one of the wallet addresses. Call me. I excused myself to return the call, stepping into a quiet corridor. What did you find? I asked without preamble. The blockchain team at the SEC forwarded their findings to me, Riley explained. One of Rowan's hardware wallets was just connected to a terminal in Singapore. He's accessing his crypto books. My pulse quickened. Can they trace the exact location? Better than that. The exchange he's using requires identity verification for withdrawals over certain amounts. He submitted documentation as Robert Prentice, a known alias we flagged yesterday. He's getting sloppy, I observed. Or desperate, Riley countered. Either way, it's our first real-time sighting since Paris. The SEC has alerted Singaporean authorities. A strange calm settled over me as I processed this development. Rowan was running, scrambling to access his hidden resources. He was in motion, which meant he was leaving. Traces. What about Martin Reeves? I asked. The FBI found correspondence between him and Rowan. He might be the MR from the crypto ledger. I'll dig into it, Riley promised. Maya's been helping too, using her airline connections to check passenger manifests for Rowan's known aliases. I ended the call and returned to Agent Rhodes, who was examining a detailed timeline of my daily routines that had been found in the storage unit. He documented everything, she remarked. Your work schedule, social engagements, even when you restock groceries. The better to avoid me, I said, the realization crystallizing. Or rather, to ensure his stand-ins could avoid any unexpected encounters. Camille nodded. The level of preparation is remarkable. He's accessing funds in Singapore, told her. The SEC is tracking him. Her eyebrows rose. That's significant progress. We should... She was interrupted by another agent entering with an evidence bag. Agent Rhodes, you need to see this. Inside the bag was a tablet. The agent powered it on, revealing a dashboard with multiple video feeds, all showing different areas of my condo. It's a monitoring system, the agent explained. These cameras are still active. I stared at the live images of my empty living room, kitchen, bedroom, spaces I had thought private, spaces that had been under surveillance for who knows how long. Can you deactivate them? I asked, my voice steady despite the violation churning inside me. We'd prefer to leave them running for now, Camille said carefully. They might lead us to whoever is monitoring them on the other end. I nodded, understanding the tactical advantage even as I recoiled from the invasion. Use them. Use everything. That evening, I returned to Riley's apartment to find both her and Maya hunched over laptops, surrounded by printouts and coffee mugs. They looked up as I entered, their expressions betraying their exhaustion. We found Martin Reeves, Maya announced, without preamble. Or at least we found his shell company, Meridian Consortium International, MRCI. The notation made perfect sense now. He's a facilitator, Riley elaborated. Sets up offshore structures for wealthy clients looking to shield assets. No criminal record, but his name has appeared in multiple international financial investigations. And the connection to Rowan? I asked, shedding my coat. They went to business school together, Maya said. University of Pennsylvania, 2008. We found a yearbook photo. She turned her laptop to show me, a younger Rowan with his arm around another man, both in graduation regalia, both wearing the smug expressions of young men certain of their own brilliance. That's Martin Reeves? I studied the face, searching for any hint of familiarity. Had I met him at some point? Had he been watching me too? Yes, Riley confirmed. And here's where it gets interesting. Reeves has an office in Singapore, near the financial district, near where Rowan had just accessed his cryptocurrency wallet. The connection couldn't be coincidence. He's with Reeves, I said, the certainty settling in my bones, using his infrastructure to move money and establish new identities. That's our theory, Riley agreed. I've shared this with the SEC and FBI. They're coordinating with Singaporean authorities to locate both men. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. Clover immediately jumped into my lap, her weight and warmth a small comfort in the storm of revelations. What now? I asked. Maya closed her laptop. Now we wait, and we prepare. For what? For when they find him, she said simply. For what comes after? What comes after? The question had been haunting me since Alessandra raised it earlier. What did I want when this was over? What form of resolution could possibly address the magnitude of this betrayal? As if reading my thoughts, Riley spoke softly. It doesn't have to be about punishment, Brooks. It can be about reclaiming what's yours. Your assets, yes, but also your narrative, your future. I stroked Clover's fur, finding rhythm in the repetitive motion. I keep thinking about the other women, the ones before me. I met Riley's gaze. Alessandra wants me to meet them. And do you want that? Did I? Part of me recoiled at the idea of being grouped with Rowan's previous targets. Another part recognized the potential value, both practical and psychological, in connecting with others who had survived his elaborate schemes. I think I do, I decided. Not as victims comparing notes, but as investigators pooling intelligence. Maya nodded approvingly. That's my sister, always turning setbacks into strategies. For the first time in days, I felt something like purpose, a clear direction, emerging from the chaos. Rowan had built his deception on isolation, ensuring each of his targets remained unaware of the others. By combining our knowledge, we might unravel what authorities alone could not. Tomorrow, I said, reaching for my phone to text Alessandra. I'll meet them tomorrow. Outside Riley's windows, Chicago's lights glimmered against the night sky. Somewhere, across the world, Rowan was moving, planning, perhaps even believing he had escaped. He didn't realize yet that the hunter had become the hunted. And this time, he wasn't facing just one woman, but many, united by a shared determination that he would never do this again. The women waited in a private room at the back of an unassuming cafe in Lincoln Park, neutral territory away from government, offices, and the weight of official investigations. Alessandra had arranged the meeting, then stepped back, understanding this needed to happen without her institutional presence. I paused at the door, gathering courage. What do you say to strangers who share your most intimate humiliation? What common language exists for this uncommon experience? Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. There were two of them, one in her early 50s with silver-streaked hair pulled into a sleek bun, the other younger, perhaps my age, with the watchful eyes of someone who had learned caution the hard way. Maya Brooks? The older woman asked, rising from her seat. I'm Eleanor Wyatt. This is Jessica Chen. Just Brooks, please, I said, shaking their outstretched hands. Thank you for meeting me. We've been following your case, Jessica said, gesturing for me to join them at the table. The actor impersonation is a new twist. He's getting more elaborate. The casual way she referenced Rowan's methods, as if discussing the evolution of a familiar species, struck me as both unsettling and oddly comforting. These women understood in ways no one else could. When did he? I hesitated, searching for the right words. When were you with him? 2018 to 2020, Eleanor replied. He was Richard Preston then, investment banker from Philadelphia. We were together 16 months before he disappeared with my retirement fund and a collection of rare coins that had been in my family for generations. 2021, Jessica offered. Ryan Palmer, tech consultant, 11 months. He took everything, my savings, my inheritance from my grandmother, even my credit score. She managed a hollow smile. He left the cat, though. He gave me one, I said, the absurdity of it suddenly striking me. Clover, I always thought it was a gesture of commitment. It was, Eleanor said. Just not the kind you thought. It bound you to a routine, made your movements more predictable. The realization landed like a physical blow. Even Clover, my companion, my comfort through this nightmare, had been part of Rowan's calculation, a prop in his elaborate production. What happened after? I asked. How did you rebuild? Jessica reached for her coffee, her expression hardening. Slowly, painfully. I moved in with my sister for a while. Changed careers. I'm in cybersecurity now, specializing in identity theft. I refused to be silent, Eleanor said. I reported everything, spoke to anyone who would listen, tried to warn others. That's how the SEC found me last year. Have either of you had any contact with him since? They exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Not directly, Jessica said carefully. But about 3 months after he disappeared, I received an anonymous email with a link to an offshore account containing exactly half of what he'd taken from me. No message, no explanation. Eleanor nodded. Same. 6 months later, half my money returned through an untraceable transfer. I frowned, trying to make sense of this pattern. Partial restitution? That doesn't align with the profile of a pure con artist. We have a theory, Eleanor said. We think it's not him making these returns. We think it's Martin Reeves. The name sent a jolt through me. Reeves? His business school friend? Jessica leaned forward. We've been comparing timelines. After each of Rowan's disappearances, there's a period of about 3 to 6 months before these partial returns occur, always exactly half of what was taken, as if someone is claiming their share, then returning the rest, I concluded, the pieces aligning in my mind. Reeves isn't just a facilitator, he's a partner, an equal partner. Eleanor nodded. That's our thinking. Rowan does the field work, the deception. Reeves handles the financial infrastructure, and apparently has a different ethical code. This new dimension complicated the picture I'd been forming. If Reeves consistently returned half of the stolen assets, was he a reluctant participant? A guilty conscience in an otherwise ruthless operation? Have you shared this theory with the authorities? I asked. Yes, Jessica confirmed. But without concrete evidence linking Reeves to the returns, they've focused primarily on Rowan. For the next hour, we compared experiences, noting the eerie similarities in Rowan's methods across years and identities, the careful cultivation of trust, the gradual isolation from friends or family who asked too many questions, the meticulous attention to detail in his constructed personas. He studies his targets, Eleanor observed, identifies what they value, what they're seeking, then becomes exactly that. Jessica nodded. For me, it was security, an intellectual connection. I'd just gone through a difficult breakup with someone who never understood my work. Family stability, Eleanor said. My husband had died 2 years earlier. Richard, Rowan, filled that void perfectly. Too perfectly, I realize now. They turned expectant eyes to me, waiting for my contribution to this grim inventory. Attention to detail, I said after a moment. Perception. I spent my career finding patterns others missed, but he made me feel truly seen in a way no one else had. The irony tasted bitter. He was very good at making me believe I mattered, while cataloging exactly how to exploit you. Jessica finished, her tone matter-of-fact rather than pitying. We fell silent, each processing this shared experience from our individual perspectives. Then Jessica reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. We've been building something, she said, sliding it across the table. A comprehensive timeline of Rowan's activities over the past 7 years. Known identities, locations, patterns. With your information, we can fill in more gaps. I opened the folder to find a meticulously documented history. Photographs, dates, financial records, even psychological observations. Years of Rowan's life mapped with the same precision he had applied to studying us. This is extensive, I said, echoing Agent Rhodes's words from the day before. It started as therapy, Eleanor explained. A way to make sense of what happened. Then it became something more. A tool. A weapon, even. Knowledge is power, Jessica added. Especially when dealing with, someone who weaponized information against us. As I paged through their research, a plan began forming in my mind. One that went beyond simply finding Rowan and recovering assets. These women had been rebuilding their lives for years, turning their experiences into expertise, their pain into purpose. What if we use this? I suggested, tapping the folder. Not just to find him, but to create something that helps others identify these patterns before it's too late? Eleanor's eyes lit with interest. A prevention system? More than that, I continued, the idea expanding. A comprehensive resource for financial institutions, compliance departments, even dating platforms. Red flags, warning signs, typical methodologies of long con predators. From victims to experts, Jessica mused. I like the reframing. Not victims, I corrected. Specialists. For the first time since entering the room, I felt something shift, not just in my own perspective, but in the energy between the three of us. We were no longer just comparing wounds. We were forming an alliance. We'll need more data, Eleanor said, already thinking practically. More cases, more patterns. I have access to financial forensics tools through my firm, I offered, and connections at several major banks. I can build the digital infrastructure, Jessica added. Secure database, pattern recognition algorithms. We spent the next hour outlining our impromptu project, each contributing expertise from our respective fields. What had begun as a support meeting was transforming into something more powerful, a collaboration that could potentially prevent others from experiencing what we had endured. As our meeting drew to a close, Eleanor hesitated, then asked the question that had been hovering unspoken. If they find him, when they find him, what do you want to happen, Brooks? I considered the question carefully. Initially, I wanted justice, arrests, trials, public exposure, but now, I gestured to the folder, to the work we'd begun. Now I want prevention more than punishment. I want to ensure he can never do this again. To anyone. Jessica nodded. That's where I landed too. The system isn't designed to truly address these kinds of elaborate deceptions. Even if he serves time, it won't be proportional to the damage. So we create our own system, Eleanor concluded. One that doesn't depend on traditional justice mechanisms. As we exchanged contact information and made plans to meet again, my phone vibrated with a text from Agent Rhodes. Singaporean authorities have located Reeves. No sign of Pierce yet. Call me when you can. The hunt was progressing. Soon, very soon, Rowan would be found. And when that moment came, I would be ready, not as a victim seeking retribution, but as a near investigator closing a case, securing evidence for a much larger purpose. Outside the cafe, rain had begun to fall, casting Chicago in shimmering reflections. I stood under the awning, watching pedestrians hurry past with umbrellas and hunched shoulders. Normal lives continuing in their ordinary rhythms. That had been me once, moving through days structured by routine and expectation, believing in the solid ground beneath my feet. Now I knew better. The ground could shift at any moment. Security was an illusion, trust a luxury that required vigilance. But there was strength in that knowledge, a clarity that came from seeing the world without filters. My phone vibrated again, Maya this time. News from Singapore. Come home. As I hailed a taxi, I realized I'd referred to Riley's apartment as home in my thoughts, a small but significant shift. Home was no longer the condo filled with surveillance and deception. Home was where truth resided, where people who genuinely cared for me waited. And for now, that was enough. The Singapore lead proved both breakthrough and complication. Martin Reeves had been detained and questioned, but maintained he hadn't seen Rowan in months. His story, delivered with practiced corporate smoothness, claimed he was merely a financial advisor who had occasionally consulted for various Pierce enterprises. He's lying, I told Agent Rhodes as we reviewed the interrogation transcript in her office. The crypto transfers, the consistent pattern of partial returns to previous victims. Reeves isn't just a consultant. He's a partner. We know, Camille agreed, but proving it is another matter. Singaporean authorities can only hold him for 72 hours without formal charges. And Rowan? Still no confirmed sighting, but Reeves's devices yielded something interesting. She slid a printout across her desk, a calendar entry for the following week. Chicago meeting, MP, Peninsula Hotel. MP? I studied the cryptic notation. Not Maya Park. We don't think so, Camille said. The reservation was made under the name Michael Porter, one of Rowan's known aliases we've been tracking. The implication crystallized instantly. He's coming back to Chicago. It appears so. And Reeves was scheduled to meet him. Why would he return? I wondered aloud. It's too risky. People like Rowan operate on supreme confidence, Camille explained. They believe they're untouchable, and there must be something here valuable enough to justify the risk. My mind raced through possibilities. What could be so important that Rowan would risk returning to the city where his entire operation had been exposed? What asset hadn't been secured or moved offshore? The storage unit, I realized suddenly. There must be something there we missed. Within hours, a second, more thorough search of the storage facility was underway. This time, agents removed every panel, checked every seam, scanned every surface. Their persistence was rewarded when they discovered a hidden compartment in the unit's ceiling containing 3 more hardware cryptocurrency wallets and a USB drive secured in a waterproof case. The wallets contain approximately 23 million in various cryptocurrencies, Agent Rhodes informed me later that day. The USB drive is encrypted, but our tech team is working on it. 23 million. The figure stunned me, not just for its magnitude, but for what it represented. The accumulated proceeds of years of deception, multiple lives disrupted and dismantled for financial gain. What happens to the assets? I asked. If we can prove they're proceeds of fraud, they'll be seized and eventually distributed to identified victims through a restitution process. Victims. The word still grated, but I pushed past my reaction to focus on the practical implications. Including Eleanor and Jessica? If they can demonstrate their losses were connected to the same scheme, yes. I nodded already, planning to ensure their cases were properly linked to mine in the federal investigation. Our informal alliance was evolving into something more structured, more purposeful. That evening, I met with Eleanor and Jessica at Riley's apartment to share the developments and continue building our prevention framework. Maya joined us, bringing her unique perspective as someone who had observed Rowan's operation from the outside. The Peninsula Hotel meeting is our opportunity, Maya insisted as we strategized around Riley's dining table. If Rowan is returning to Chicago, we need to be ready. The FBI will handle his apprehension, Riley cautioned. This isn't a vigilante operation. Of course not, Jessica agreed. But we have insights the authorities might miss, patterns they might not recognize. Eleanor, always the most measured of our group, tapped her pen against her notepad. What exactly are you suggesting, Maya? Surveillance, my sister replied without hesitation. We monitor the hotel before the meeting date, identify potential escape routes, secondary meeting locations. If Rowan is coming back for something specific, he'll likely secure it before meeting Reeves. That's dangerously close to interfering with a federal investigation, Riley warned. Not if we're simply observing and reporting, I countered, warming to the idea. We won't engage, won't intervene, but we might spot things others would miss. As we outlined our approach, Clover wandered between our chairs, occasionally pawing at printouts as if contributing her own feline analysis. I watched, her with newfound appreciation, remembering how she had sensed something amiss with Theo long before I had recognized the deception. There's still the question of why, Jessica noted. Why risk returning? Why not send another actor? Because whatever's hidden is too valuable to trust to a proxy, Eleanor suggested. Something he needs personally. The USB drive from the storage unit remained in FBI custody, its contents still locked behind encryption. I couldn't shake the feeling that it held the answer, the missing piece that would explain not just Rowan's return, but perhaps the entire operation. We need to know what's on that drive, I said. Riley shook her head. The FBI won't share that information until they've fully processed it as evidence. Then we work with what we have, Maya declared. 4 women who understand Rowan Pierce better than anyone. 4 perspectives on the same predator. We spent the next 3 days in careful preparation, compiling our collective knowledge, establishing a rotation schedule for hotel observation, coordinating with Agent Rhodes to ensure we didn't impede the official investigation. The rhythm of purposeful action helped quiet the persistent questions that still haunted my quieter moments. Had any of it been real? Had he ever, even briefly, cared? Would I ever fully recover what had been taken, not just financially, but emotionally? On the 4th day, as I was reviewing Peninsula Hotel floor plans with Jessica, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Maya Brooks? An accented voice inquired when I answered. Speaking. Who is this? My name is Thomas Wei, Singapore Financial Authority. I've been authorized to speak with you about Martin Reeves. I put the call on speaker, gesturing for Jessica to stay quiet. Go ahead. Mr. Reeves has offered to cooperate in exchange for immunity considerations, Wei explained. Part of that cooperation involves returning certain assets to identified victims. Your name is on his list. The confirmation of our theory that Reeves had been behind the partial returns sent a surge of validation through me. What exactly is he offering? Approximately half of the funds traced to your accounts, plus information about Rowan Pierce's current whereabouts and activities. Half. The same pattern Eleanor and Jessica had described. And the other half? A pause. Mr. Reeves claims that portion was already spent or irretrievably invested. More likely, it represented Reeves's own share of the operation, the partner's cut he wasn't willing to surrender, even in cooperation. I exchanged glances with Jessica, whose nod confirmed my thinking. What information does he have about Rowan? I asked. He claims Pierce is planning to establish a new identity in South America. He has dates, locations, contacts. And why is he suddenly willing to provide this? Another pause. Mr. Reeves indicated that his arrangement with Pierce has deteriorated. He believes Pierce intends to eliminate their partnership permanently. The euphemism was clear. Rowan wasn't just planning to dissolve a business relationship. He was planning to ensure Reeves couldn't implicate him further. The stakes. had escalated beyond fraud to potential violence. I need to consult with the FBI before responding, I told Wei. Agent Camille Rhodes at the Chicago field office is leading the investigation here. Of course. Please understand this offer has a limited time frame. Mr. Reeves will remain in custody for just 48 more hours without additional charges. After ending the call, I immediately contacted Agent Rhodes, relaying the conversation and its implications. This changes our approach, Camille said, her voice tight with urgency. If Pierce is planning to harm Reeves, he may have similar intentions toward other potential witnesses, including me. The unspoken concern hung in the air. The Peninsula meeting may be a trap, I realized. Not a legitimate business meeting at all. We're adjusting our security protocols immediately, Camille assured me. I'm sending an agent to your location now. Don't leave until they arrive. The protective response should have been reassuring. Instead, it triggered a sudden clarity, a recognition that I was tired of being reactive, tired of waiting for the next revelation, the next threat. For months, Rowan had been orchestrating my life, without my knowledge. Now that I knew, now that I understood the game, I wanted to change the rules. As soon as I hung up, I turned to Jessica. Call Eleanor and Maya. We need to move faster. What are you thinking? Reeves says Rowan is planning to flee to South America, but he's still coming to Chicago first. That means whatever's here is essential to his escape plan. I pulled up the notes. From our previous sessions. We've been asking why he'd risk returning. The better question is, what does he need that he can't leave without? Jessica was already dialing. You think it's not just about the cryptocurrency wallets. The FBI secured those days ago. He must know that. I paced the room, mind racing. No, he's coming back for something else. Something we haven't identified yet. By... The time the FBI agent arrived to establish security at Riley's apartment, we had assembled our complete team. Eleanor brought her meticulous financial analysis, Jessica her cybersecurity expertise, Maya her strategic thinking, and Riley her legal insight. Together we revisited every piece of evidence, every pattern, every inconsistency in Rowan's elaborate scheme. The notebooks. Eleanor. Suggested. Did the FBI analyze all of them? They were focused on the scripts, the surveillance equipment, I recalled. But Rowan documented everything. There must be a master plan somewhere. Maya leaned forward. What about the USB drive? Has the FBI cracked the encryption? Not yet, I admitted. Their cybersecurity team is still working on it. Jessica's expression shifted. What? Encryption method are they trying to break? I checked my messages from Agent Rhodes. Standard AES 256 with a complex passphrase according to their initial assessment. Jessica shook her head. That's not how Rowan would do it. He's too theatrical, too embedded in his own mythology. What do you mean? When Rowan, was with me, he was obsessed with puzzles, with hidden meanings. He wouldn't... Use standard encryption. He'd use something personally significant, something that ties back to his own narrative. The insight resonated immediately. Rowan's elaborate schemes always contained elements of performance, of hidden meanings designed to demonstrate his own cleverness. Even his scripts included literary references and inside jokes, markers of his intellectual vanity. What was significant to him? I wondered aloud. What symbols or patterns appeared repeatedly? Chess, Riley suggested. You mentioned he was obsessed with chess in college. And the storage unit number, Eleanor added. 317, March 17th? Is that date meaningful? I scrolled through my calendar history. March 17th last year. That's when we closed on the Michigan property. The lake house we kia. We're supposedly saving for. The pieces began aligning. The lake house, I repeated. That's what he's coming back for. Not the condo, not the storage unit, the property in Michigan. Maya frowned. But you said that was just a dream, a future plan. No, we actually bought it, I explained. A small cottage on Lake Michigan. We closed last year, but we're renovating before using it. I haven't even... thought about it since everything. Riley was already pulling up property records on her laptop. Here it is, purchased in both your names, but the deed shows some unusual provisions. She scanned the document. The property transfers fully to the surviving spouse in the event of death, with no probate required. A survivorship deed, I said, the implications crystallizing. If something... happened to me, the property would automatically become his, completely outside normal estate procedures. And if something happened to both of you? Eleanor asked quietly. Riley continued reading. There's a transfer on death provision to a trust, the Lake Michigan Preservation Trust. She looked up. This isn't standard real estate practice? It's an escape hatch, Jessica concluded. A way to... transfer assets that wouldn't be immediately identified in a financial investigation. The picture became suddenly, terrifyingly clear. Rowan wasn't just returning for the lake house, he was returning to eliminate the one person whose death would trigger his ownership of the property. Me. As this realization settled over our group, Agent Rhodes called with the final piece of the puzzle. We've... Decrypted the USB drive, she said without preamble. It contains detailed identity packages, passports, credit histories, property deeds, all for Robert and Maria Porter. Let me guess, I said, my voice steady despite the chill spreading through me. The property deeds include a lake house in Michigan. Yes, Camille confirmed. How did you know? Because I just figured out what Rowan Pierce is. Really planning, I told her, and it's much worse than fraud. The Peninsula Hotel gleamed in Chicago's early morning light, its distinguished facade belying the tension unfolding within and around it. In a suite on the 19th floor, FBI agents had established their command center, monitoring surveillance feeds and communication channels. In the hotel's elegant lobby, undercover operatives, mingled with guests and staff. And in a coffee shop across the street, I waited with Maya, watching the hotel's main entrance through the window. This is a mistake, Maya muttered for the third time. You should be in protective custody, not sitting in public view. We've been over this, I replied, keeping my eyes on the hotel. Rowan would recognize a trap. He needs to believe I'm unaware of. His plan. I checked my watch. Besides, we're 6 hours ahead of the scheduled meeting time. This is just preliminary surveillance. Maya's protective instincts had made her the most vocal opponent of my involvement in the operation, but she had ultimately conceded to the FBI's assessment. The best way to capture Rowan was to maintain as many elements of his expected scenario as possible, while controlling the hidden variables. Agent Rhodes says their facial recognition system is active at all hotel entrances, I added, hoping to reassure her. The moment Rowan appears, we'll know. My phone vibrated. Riley, who was monitoring police channels from her office. Nothing unusual on emergency frequencies. All quiet. The plan was comprehensive. Allow Rowan to believe his meeting with Reeves. Was proceeding as scheduled while positioning agents to intercept him before he could make contact with me. The Michigan property had been secured, its records flagged. The identity packages on the USB drive had been entered into international watch lists. Every escape route we could identify had been covered, yet anxiety still twisted in my stomach. Rowan had demonstrated an extraordinary Capacity for anticipating obstacles, for creating contingencies within contingencies. Would he sense the trap? Would he adapt his approach? Was there an angle we had missed? Movement at the service entrance, Maya said suddenly, gesturing to her phone, which displayed a security feed Jessica had managed to access. Someone matching his height and build. I studied the grainy image. A man in a hotel staff uniform, face obscured by a cap. Can't confirm it's him. Sending to Rhodes now, Maya replied, forwarding the footage. Minutes later, Camille's response came back. Facial recognition inconclusive, maintaining positions. The waiting continued. Tense, exhausting, each minute stretching interminably. Eleanor and Jessica were positioned at other vantage points around the hotel. Creating a civilian surveillance net that complemented the FBI's official operation. Our collective knowledge of Rowan's patterns, his preferences, his methods of deception had been incorporated into the tactical plan. At 11:17 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. My darling Maya, we need to talk. Our lake house, 3 p.m. today. Come alone, or Riley Vaughn receives the evidence. Package in my possession. I believe the Bar Association takes ethics violations quite seriously. My hands shook as I showed the message to Maya. He's changing the meeting location and threatening Riley. What evidence is he talking about? I don't know, I admitted. But Riley has been aggressive in defending previous fraud victims. She's made enemies. Maya was already texting Agent Rhodes. Relaying the new development. The response came quickly. Do not engage. Do not respond to the text. Return to the command center immediately. But as we gathered our belongings to leave the coffee shop, another message arrived. I see your sister with you. How convenient. Tell her I enjoyed our Paris encounter more than she realizes. My deadline stands. 3 p.m. alone, or Riley's career ends today. The direct reference to Maya's presence sent a chill through me. He was watching us, right now. My eyes scanned the coffee shop, the street, the buildings opposite. Where was he? Move, Maya whispered urgently. Now, don't look around. We exited the coffee shop and walked briskly toward the hotel's side entrance, where an FBI agent was waiting to escort us to the command center. Once inside the way, Secure suite. I showed Agent Rhodes the text messages. He's trying to isolate you, she said immediately. Classic predator tactic. Separate the target from protection. What about Riley? Could he actually have something damaging? Camille's expression was grim. We can't rule it out. Your husband has demonstrated extraordinary capacity for gathering compromising information. Ex-husband. Corrected automatically. The distinction somehow important even in this moment of crisis. The Michigan property is 4 hours away, Maya pointed out. If the meeting is supposedly at 3 p.m., he's manipulating the timeline to force quick, poorly considered decisions. Agent Rhodes nodded. Exactly. We maintain our position. Ms. Brooks remains in protective custody. We continue monitoring all. Approaches to the hotel. But as the hours passed with no sign of Rowan, the weight of Riley's potential jeopardy grew heavier. What if he did have something that could damage her? What if my refusal to engage triggered some prearranged release of information? At 1:45 p.m., I made a decision. I need to go to the lake house, I announced. Absolutely not, Agent Rhodes responded. That's exactly. What he wants. Not alone, I clarified, with a full tactical team. But he needs to believe I'm coming alone, or at least trying to. Maya grasped my intention immediately. You want to be the bait. I want to be the hunter, I corrected. Rowan believes he knows me, knows how I'll react, what I'll prioritize. He's counting on my loyalty to Riley, my aversion to confrontation. So you give him. What he expects, Agent Rhodes concluded, while we prepare what he doesn't. The plan came together rapidly. A caravan of unmarked vehicles, agents disguised as roadside assistance personnel positioned along the route to Michigan, surveillance equipment established around the lake house perimeter. I would drive my own car, appearing to honor Rowan's demand for a solo meeting, while an entire FBI. Operation shadowed my journey. He'll be watching for signs of law enforcement, I warned as we prepared. He knows protocol, knows what to look for. Let me come with you, Maya insisted, at least for part of the drive. I shook my head. He specifically mentioned seeing you with me. He'll be suspicious if we leave together. I squeezed her hand. I'll be fine. This ends today. As I prepared, To depart, Eleanor and Jessica arrived at the command center, their civilian surveillance shift complete. They embraced me with the fierce support of women who understood exactly what I was facing. Not just the physical danger, but the psychological weight of confronting the architect of so much deception. "Remember who you are?" Eleanor said quietly. "Not who he made you believe you were." We'll... "Be monitoring everything," Jessica added. "You're not alone." With a final check of my wire, my tracker, and the panic button disguised as a watch, I left the security of the command center and walked to my car in the hotel's parking garage. Every step felt both terrifying and strangely liberating. Movement toward a confrontation I had been unconsciously preparing for since Maya's call on that fateful morning. The drive to Michigan unfolded in tense silence. Agent Rhodes remained connected through my earpiece, providing updates as her team leapfrogged ahead to secure the route and final destination. Occasional unmarked FBI vehicles appeared in my rearview mirror, maintaining discreet distance while ensuring constant coverage. The lake house came into view at precisely 2:43 p.m., a modest, A-frame cabin nestled among pine trees, its weathered deck extending toward the water. I had visited only once after the purchase, but before renovations began. Rowan had been enthusiastic then, describing future summers, potential expansions, even where we might place a dock for a boat we didn't yet own. Had any of that been genuine? Or had it all been part of the elaborate staging of our... Marriage, another set piece in his theatrical production? Thermal imaging shows one person inside, Agent Rhodes informed me through the earpiece. Northeast corner, stationary. Approach slowly. I parked in the gravel driveway and sat for a moment, gathering my courage. Through the windshield, I could see the lake beyond the house, its surface glittering in the afternoon sun. In another life, this could have been a place of peace, of connection. Instead, it had become the final setting in a drama of deception. "I'm going in," I said, both to Agent Rhodes and to myself. The cabin door was unlocked. I pushed it open slowly, stepping into the main room with its vaulted ceiling and panoramic lake view. The renovation was further along than I'd expected. New hardwood floors, updated kitchen, Fresh paint. Someone had been investing in this property, preparing it for, what? A quick sale? A new identity's backstory? In here, Maya. The voice came from a small study off the main room. Rowan's voice, unmistakable despite the months of separation. I moved toward it, acutely aware of the wire recording every sound, the FBI team surrounding the property, the agents prepared to intervene at Tree. The first sign of danger. He sat behind a desk, dressed in the navy Tom Ford suit I recognized from Maya's Paris photograph. His appearance was immaculate as always. Clean-shaven, hair perfectly styled, posture relaxed yet commanding. Only his eyes betrayed something different, a hardness, a calculation that I had somehow never noticed during our years together. "Right on time," he said, smiling as... if greeting a business associate rather than the wife he had systematically betrayed. Always so reliable. "Where's the evidence against Riley?" I asked, remaining near the doorway. He gestured to a folder on the desk. "Direct and focused. I've always appreciated that about you." His gaze swept over me with clinical assessment. "You're looking well, all things considered. What do you want?" "Rowan? A civilized conversation between adults. Is that so unreasonable?" He indicated a chair opposite the desk. "Please sit." I remained standing. "I'm not here for games. I'm here for whatever you claim to have on Riley, and then I'm leaving." His smile tightened fractionally. Such hostility, after everything we shared. "We shared nothing," I replied evenly. "You performed a role. You..." "Collected data. You executed a fraud. There was never a we." For the first time, I saw something like genuine emotion flicker across his features. Irritation. Perhaps even hurt. "Is that what you tell yourself? That it was all pretend? All calculation?" "Wasn't it?" He leaned back, studying me with renewed interest. "You've changed. There's a hardness to you now. I'm not sure I like it. I'm..." "Devastated by your disapproval," I said, the sarcasm flowing naturally. "The folder, Rowan. Now. First, a proposal." He straightened, transitioning seamlessly into what I recognized as his presentation posture, the stance he took when pitching ideas to clients or colleagues. "This property is worth considerably more than we paid for it. Waterfront real estate in this area has appreciated." 23% in 18 months? I stared at him, momentarily bewildered by this mundane observation. You're talking about property values? Now? I'm talking about opportunity, he corrected. Sign the deed transfer papers I've prepared, and two things happen. You get the folder with Riley's indiscretions, and you never hear from me again. You want me to sign over the lake house. I clarified. That's what this elaborate threat was about? Real estate? Not just real estate. A clean exit. A final severing of ties. He pulled a document from a drawer. One signature and our chapter ends permanently. I stepped further into the room, close enough now to see the document. A standard quitclaim deed, prepared for my signature. Why this property specifically? You've moved? Millions offshore. Why risk returning for a lake house worth a fraction of that? Something shifted in his expression, a tightening around the eyes, a subtle tension in his jaw. I was asking the wrong questions, missing something important. Because it's mine, he said simply. I found it. I negotiated the price. I oversaw the renovations. Unlike our other assets, I actually wanted this one. Fictitious? Confession, if it could be called that, caught me off guard. In all our dissection of Rowan's methodical fraud, we had overlooked the possibility of genuine attachment, however warped. Sign the papers, Maya. He pushed the document toward the edge of the desk. One signature for a clean break. Surely that's worth Riley's professional reputation. I approached the desk slowly, scanning the quit. Claim deed with the trained eye of someone who had reviewed countless financial documents. Standard language, proper legal formatting, notary seal already in place. But there, in the property description, a detail caught my attention. A survey reference number I didn't recognize. This isn't just for the cabin, I said, looking up to meet his gaze. This includes additional acreage. Property I never knew we owned. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. Always the compliance officer. Yes, the purchase included adjoining land, a minor detail. But it wasn't minor. The survey reference indicated a substantial parcel extending beyond the lakefront lot, at least 40 additional acres, possibly more. What's on the additional land, Rowan? His patience visibly thinned. Sign the papers. Maya, my patience isn't unlimited. Neither is mine. I stepped back from the desk. What's on the land? For several seconds, we stared at each other in silence, former partners, now adversaries, each assessing the other's resolve. Then, with deliberate casualness, Rowan reached into his jacket. Federal agents! Hands where we can see them! The command boomed through the cabin as FBI personnel. Surged through the doors and windows, weapons drawn. Agent Rhodes led the entry team, moving with practiced efficiency to secure Rowan and clear the room. Are you all right, Ms. Brooks? She asked as another agent handcuffed Rowan, who offered no resistance, his expression a mask of cold fury. Yes, I confirmed. But there's something on the property. Additional acreage he was particularly fee. Interested in securing. Camille nodded. We'll send a team to investigate. She turned to Rowan. Rowan Pierce, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial crimes, and attempted coercion. You have the right to remain silent. As she continued reading his rights, I watched the man I had married, the man I had believed I knew intimately, transform before my eyes. The charm, the warmth, the attentive interest, all evaporated, replaced by a cold calculation that assessed options, angles, advantages even in this moment of defeat. You've made a significant error, Maya, he said, as agents prepared to escort him out. One you'll regret. The only error I made was trusting you, I replied. And I've already moved beyond regret. The investigation of the additional acreage revealed what Agent Rhodes later described as the contingency within the contingency. A recently constructed underground storage facility containing physical gold, gemstones, additional identity packages, and communications equipment. The rural property, selected for its isolation and minimal regulatory oversight, had provided perfect cover for establishing what amounted to an apocalypse bunker for a man who lived by creating and discarding identities. The value exceeds $8 million, Camille told me the following day as we debriefed at the FBI field office. Combined with the cryptocurrency recovered earlier, we're looking at over $30 million in assets, all subject to seizure and eventual restitution. Restitution. The word carried weight, an acknowledgement that What had been taken could, at least partially, be restored. Yet as I sat in that government office, surrounded by evidence of Rowan's elaborate deceptions, I understood that the most valuable restitution had already occurred. The reclamation of my own narrative, my own agency, my own future. In the weeks that followed, the legal machinery ground forward with methodical precision. Rowan, facing charges in multiple jurisdictions, remained in custody despite his attorney's strenuous efforts to secure bail. Martin Reeves, true to his pattern, cooperated extensively in exchange for reduced charges. The circle of fraud victims widened as more women came forward, their stories eerily similar to mine, to Eleanor's, to Jessica's. We continued our work, no longer just 3 women sharing trauma. But a growing network of specialists developing tools to identify and prevent similar schemes. Financial institutions began implementing our red flag protocols. Law enforcement agencies consulted our pattern recognition models. What had begun as personal healing evolved into professional purpose. 6 months after Rowan's arrest, I stood on the deck of the lake house, now legally mine through court. Order, watching autumn leaves drift onto the water's surface. The property had been cleansed of surveillance equipment, stripped of hidden compartments, returned to what it should have been all along, a place of peace, of authenticity. Maya joined me at the railing, handing me a mug of coffee. "Penny for your thoughts?" I smiled at the familiar phrase. Just reflecting on transformation. How something meant for deception can become something genuine. She nodded, understanding. "You're keeping it, then?" "I'm keeping it," I confirmed, "but not just for me." Inside, Eleanor and Jessica were setting up laptops on the dining table, preparing for a virtual training session with bank compliance officers. Riley was reviewing legal documents for our newly established foundation, the Clarity. Project dedicated to educating the public about long con fraud and supporting recovery efforts for victims. And Clover, ever the perceptive observer, watched from her perch on the window seat, tail swishing with what I chose to interpret as approval. "They'll be arriving soon," Maya reminded me. "The first group." The group she referred to was the inaugural retreat participants, women recovering. from similar frauds coming together for a weekend of shared healing, practical financial rebuilding, and strategic legal planning. The lake house, once intended as a hidden asset in a scheme of deception, had been repurposed as a sanctuary for those reclaiming their lives. As we moved inside to complete preparations, my phone vibrated with a text from Agent Rhodes. Plea deal finalized. 27 years. No possibility of early release? Thought you should know first. I showed the message to Maya, Riley, Eleanor, and Jessica. A moment of silence passed as we absorbed what it meant. Not just justice served, but a definitive end to a chapter that had altered all our lives. 27 years, Eleanor said finally. It feels both enormous and insufficient. The years don't matter as much as this. Jessica gestured to our gathered circle, to the work spread across the table, to the peaceful lake beyond the windows. What we've built from what he tried to destroy. Riley raised her coffee mug. To turning trauma into expertise. To transforming victims into specialists, Eleanor added. To truth finding daylight, Maya continued, echoing the cab driver's words from months ago. I looked at these extraordinary women, my sister, my friend, my colleagues in both healing and purpose, and completed the toast with the words that had become our unofficial motto. The greatest justice isn't in humiliation. It's in choosing dignity, reclaiming our truth, and building a life no one can counterfeit. As the afternoon sun cast golden light across the lake, I felt something settle within me. Not the false security I had once believed in, but something stronger, more resilient. The foundation of a life rebuilt not on trust given blindly, but on truth hard-won. Not on appearances carefully maintained, but on authenticity fiercely protected. Clover jumped down from her perch and wound between my ankles, purring loudly. Even she seemed to recognize the symmetry. How a cat given as a prop in someone else's production had become a genuine companion in my authentic life. Outside, the first cars began arriving. Women who, like us, had survived elaborate deceptions and emerged determined to create meaning from chaos, strength from vulnerability, wisdom from pain. As I moved to welcome them, I carried with me the certainty that while betrayal had initiated my journey, it would not define. its destination. The truth had found its daylight, and in that light we would all continue to grow.